realize that
everything else is to me, it's Johnny come lately.
Einstein developed relativity by means of thought experiments. The thought experiment that gave me the answer to that first question, what was before the beginning, consisted of something like this. When is now? 2012?
Okay.
What was going on in the United States 136 years ago? You're at 1776. What was going on then? The Revolutionary War and the rise of the United States of America. Now, what was going on 1776 years earlier than that? You had in the Middle East a man named Yeshua Bar Joseph, later anglicized as Jesus of Nazareth, was walking through the countryside and teaching. And if you go back another 3,000 years, you've got the Giza Plateau, High Egyptian civilization, the pyramid building, but they claim that the Sphinx is from that Khufu dynasty. Recent archaeologists like Robert Bauval have shown water weathering patterns on the Sphinx, and there has not been free-flowing water on the Giza Plateau for 10,000 years.
Yeah, there probably has been, because the last flood was about 7,500 years ago.
That still predates 3,000 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
So the point is that the Sphinx had to be on the Giza Plateau much earlier than Khufu dynasty. And likely source for the Sphinx is the settler survivors out of Atlantis.
I know where Atlantis was. Nobody else does.
Well, when it sank and they went out in all directions like the Donovan song, some of them ended up in Egypt, some ended up in South America.
Sweetie, they were already in Egypt and South America and then North America and everywhere, all over the place.
Okay, but the reason they're all building pyramids is because they got the source from the same place, Atlantis.
Okay, but there isn't just one Atlantis. There's an Atlantis on every coastline 1,000 feet down.
Okay.
Because since the end of the Ice Age, there have been 3 massive world floods. The ocean is now 1,000 feet higher than it was. If you think that didn't cause a lot of Atlantis, what's the plural of Atlantis? Atlanti?
Atlanteans.
All over, every
Atlanteans.
coast you can think of.
But the point is that we have lost our prehistory. These are the kinds of things that went up in flame at the library in Alexandria, Egypt, when it got torched. Most people have no idea of the prehistory of Earth. So in my thought experiment, continuing to roll it back, I said, don't stop at Atlantis, go back another 50,000 years. There, the high civilization on Earth was in the Pacific Ocean. You've heard of Lemuria or Mu?
I don't believe in that either.
Well, there is archaeological evidence, the work of a guy named James Churchward and his writings, and you will find it also in the writings of Eckankar. And not just the existence of these 2 continents, but
ruins by Hawaii.
Huh?
yes, that's
Lemurian ruins.
yes,
Hawaii.
that's who came out of surviving Lemuria. The South Sea Islanders, the Hawaiians, the Melanesians, the Polynesians. Those are the race that came out of Lemuria. And I said, don't even stop there. Keep going farther back. Eventually you're going to come to...
The intellectuals like...
Well, they don't like what I'm saying. But they're free to leave then. See, before even the Lemurians, see, what the Germans co-opted as the Aryans, they were not blonde, blue-eyed.
No, they came out of northern Russia, east of the Urals.
Yes.
And they went plowing down into India.
India,
and
exactly.
Near East
Exactly.
And across
So
everywhere
that's
else, killing and raping and pillaging and burning.
Yes,
They were warriors.
but that's
Patriarchal.
But that's your 4th root race on this planet, the Aryans. We are the descendants
They
of
are an aberration, and they need to be eliminated.
Well, that's us, because we are
You like to do that?
the heirs of that. We are the evolution of that, if you will. We come from that.
So when do we get to the fifth root race?
That's the Chinese, the yellow one. It's already been predicted in the Eckankar writings. And you can see it happening in the world right now, China taking over everything. But fifth is not here yet. Fourth is the Aryans. Before the Aryans was the third, the troglodytes, or the red races. They came out of Atlantis. That's why you've got American Indians, the Mayans, the Aztecs, the pyramids in South America and in Africa, in Egypt. Before Atlantis, 50,000 years earlier, Lemuria in the Pacific, those were the olive-skinned races. That's the third race. Third?
Yes.
Aryan is fourth. Troglodyte is third. Second. The second root race, the Lemurians, or olive-skinned. And you've already given me verification I didn't look for, but you're talking about the Hawaiian relics things?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's the Lemurian race, and it's left behind evidences. Now, in the thought experiment, I said, don't stop there, keep going. And you eventually come to the first root race. And the only traces in human civilization today of the first root race is the Bible stories of Adam and Eve. Because that race was your first root race.
Uh-oh. Sorry. Don't buy that at all.
Pardon me?
There's other places as well.
Okay, you said there was an earlier race than that one?
No, I said I don't buy that at all because I think the Bible is so much myth.
I didn't say that that's an accurate history. I said traces. The only references you get at all to that first root race are in the Adam and Eve story.
Well, you get it in a lot of the other early ones that were being dreamed up about the same time.
By who?
But the people,
Give me an example.
who are they all? All those people that lived around there about the same time. They all had...
You talking about the Tigris-Euphrates Valley? The
and up
Mesopotamians?
into the Turkish area,
Sumerians? Okay.
up over toward India.
Okay. Well, you do have the Gilgamesh epic, which talks about a flood
And a whole
also.
bunch of those other
All right.
epics and things.
But nevertheless, that's the first root race. If the Bible is not the only leftover traces, and there are others, nevertheless, there are traces that refer to that race. And that was the first one on this planet.
First recorded.
Yeah, the first root race that left any kind of traces, whatever. Now, in my thought experiment, I say, again, why stop there? Keep going backwards. Go past the dinosaurs. Go past the trilobites. Go past when the lower life forms came out of the ocean and onto the land. Go backwards farther to where the oceans didn't even yet have life in them because everything was too hot and the rains coming down were just cooling it. But you can keep going back farther yet to when the clouds of gases were coalescing into what became the stars and our Earth. And then you can eventually come to the point where you say, how did those gases get here? What you're doing is verging on that bang. Eventually you're going to come back to that first moment, and then my question was, why stop there? And that leads to that first question, what was before the beginning? Because the beginning, or the Bereshis, or the Big Bang, is your first expansion outward that ends in everything else. So, that was 3. Fourth is an interesting question. That's why this is here. Fourth question is, first of all, if you have what I would call an enlightened teaching, Eckankar, for example, you learn that all the preachers who are telling you that you have a soul are full of baloney. I'll tell you flat out, you don't have a soul. You know why? Because you who are listening to me and understanding what I'm saying are the soul. What you have is
The body.
bodies. Exactly. So,
I thought that was obvious.
it is maybe in this group, but not to everybody else. You'll find very few people who understand that. But it's part of the first basic beginning in the training like Eckankar. You do not have a soul, you are a soul that has bodies. But my question number 4 is, okay then, what is it that I are? What is a soul?
I am that, I am.
And what is it?
No thing.
It is,
It is something.
it is a reflection of the no thing with the same qualities. But my point is this, you're likening the two. I go farther than
It's
that.
not the same.
I say that Genesis said on the 6th day, God says to the angels, let us make man in our image. If you know anything about mathematics, relational conditions, that which underlies computer logic. The 3 most basic relational conditions, greater than, less than, or equal to. When Genesis says, in our image,
Equal to.
well, that's not the implication I got.
We're greater than the angels, and the angels didn't say that.
Well, the implication I got out of image
The
was,
angels serve us when we know who we are.
yes, but the implication I got out of image is less than. In other words, like a photocopy. If you take a photocopy, the first one looks identical.
Then why do they serve us? Angels serve us.
Well, we are not less than. That's the point. But the impression that can be taken from that phrasing in Genesis is image? Oh, then the relational condition has to be less than. But obviously we're not going to be greater than what made us. But the only other possible other than less than or greater than is equal to, which you jumped on right at the beginning. But it's one thing to decide that that is the case. It's another thing to have the mathematical proof for it. And that's why this is here. You know what repeating decimals are?
I don't do math.
What?
I don't do math.
Well, in basic algebra is so simple, you must have gotten it.
One on
So
the
you
two.
write it. And go ahead. Well,
If I say to you the fraction 1/2, and I ask you, how do you say that with a decimal?
0.5.
Yes. If I say to you the fraction, because that's a finite decimal. If I say to you the fraction 1/3, what is the decimal?
0.333.
With the proviso that the last digit repeats forever.
Oh,
Repeating decimal. Any number that can be expressed as the ratio of 2 integers, in other words, fraction, whether the result is a finite end or an infinitely repeating end, that number is in the class of rational numbers. It gets its name from the ratio of 2 integers and can have dual expressions, fraction or decimal. So if I said 0.3333, if I wrote an equation, x equals 0.333, and I asked you what x is, you already know it's 1/3. Now, if I ask you this,
no, I don't know that, but that's all right.
well, I can implicitly prove it. Just divide
Well, no.
3 into 1.
You didn't see the shirt I wore yesterday, sorry.
Okay.
You don't do math. Yeah. All right, but it can be demonstrated. And anyone, even lightly,
What are you attempting to demonstrate?
okay, look at this number. What is that? What's
What's the
the
line
X?
over the top mean?
Repeating infinitely.
Oh, it does.
Yes. Just like the 3s go forever, the 9s go forever.